Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of our Leadership Lessons Q&A event series. My name is Alex and I'm the Growth Marketing Manager at OfferZen. Before we dive into the event, we do have some rules of engagement. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the questions tab at any time. We'll cover them at the end of the session. We are recording the session, so you'll get the replay link post the event in case you missed out on any nuggets of wisdom. And the chat is open, so feel free to say hi, share your thoughts throughout the session, if you agree or disagree, and really just to connect with others. If you'd like to now just say hi and maybe share where you're joining from. I'm not going to pause too long because we have quite a lot we want to dive into today. So while that's happening, welcome again to everyone that's just joined. I'm Alex, and I'll be hosting today's session. Just a few words about OfferZen. OfferZen is a developer talent marketplace that was founded in Cape Town, South Africa in 2016. With OfferZen, companies don't just hire, they hire smarter. You can choose to connect with top developers directly through our curated marketplace, or you can go premium with OfferZen Embedded, where a dedicated talent partner joins your team to handle the heavy lifting for you. If this sounds interesting, you can select from the poll on your screen now. Perfect. Tech leadership is often lonely, it's high stakes, and can be invisible. We host these AMAs to hero tech leadership as a craft. This is your hour to hear how others are navigating challenges, reflect on career-defining moments, and ask your own questions live. So make sure to ask away in the questions tab. Today, we're joined by Anna McDougall, an award-winning engineering leader, TEDx speaker, and author of the best-selling book, You Belong in Tech. She's known for her innovative McDougall method for technical interviews and a commitment to inclusive leadership. Please join me in welcoming Anna on stage. Let's get her on. Hi, Anna. How's it going?
Really well. How are you?
Good on this side. I think before we dive into the meaty Q&A, let's start with a brief introduction from your side.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you did it pretty well, to be honest. You made me sound really cool. Yeah, my name's Anna. I live in Germany, but you can probably tell I'm Australian. I have lived here for 10 years. I had a really interesting path into tech that is a little bit different than most people. But I have been making little websites since I was a little 8-year-old in 1995. That ages me a bit, but in 1995, I was making little websites with our terrible dial-up internet connection, and the rest is history, I suppose. But I'm currently working as an engineering manager for Hello Better, which is a digital mental health platform, basically whereby if people have mental health problems such as sleep problems or panic attacks, chronic pain, anything like that, they can actually go to their doctor and get a prescription for our app. So we are a medical device. We are treated as a medical device and regulated the same way as pacemakers are. We're not commercially available. So really it doesn't help anyone here unless you're from Germany. But if you're from Germany and you have any of those problems, please talk to your doctor and then we can help you.
Amazing. A quick run through for the audience of what we're going to be tackling today before we dive into all of those things and all of your lessons. The first is around your journey to leader, then the mess ups and the milestones, building and leading for the future. And we've added a fourth theme around visibility, storytelling, and building your brand, which I'm really excited about. Again, audience, there's plenty of time for audience questions at the end, we hope. So please make sure to drop them in the questions tab so we can account some time accordingly. And also a note to a lucky participant, we will be giving a copy of Anna's book away today. So if you are engaging, dropping your questions in the chat, we might be giving you a book. So let's dive in, Anna.
Yeah.
Theme number 1, the journey to leader. Your path from opera singer to award-winning tech leader is extraordinary. Let's rewind to the start of the journey. I'm not going to make you sing this answer. Actually, now that I say that, we should have maybe had that.
No. I'm 6 years out of practice now.
You'll be better than I would be, trust me. But you performed as an opera singer before becoming a software engineer. Tell us about the moment you decided to switch careers.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was a pretty logical decision. It was partly emotional, but mostly logical, and logistical as well. So we live in Germany. My partner is also Australian, and in 2019, I gave birth to my first child. And we were both working as opera singers at Hessen State Theatre at that time, and which is, yeah, it's in Wiesbaden. If anyone's been to Germany, it's a lovely city. You should visit. And we had been working there together. He had moved to Leipzig, which is where we live now, for a new permanent position. And I, therefore, because of the pregnancy, knew, okay, I'm on a contract, he's on a permanent position, makes sense to move where he is. I knew I had to move to Leipzig. And that triggered this thought of like, okay, do we really want to be raising a baby when we're both working nights, both working weekends, both working public holidays, New Year's Eve, Christmas, concerts? Like, these are things that are totally normal in the musical world, with no family here to support us. Is this actually practical? At the same time, I had known for a while that singing wasn't necessarily the right path for me. The reason for that was twofold. The first is that I knew I had this logical problem-solving part of my brain that I didn't feel like I was really using in the music world. And then secondly was the ambition. So I've always been an ambitious person. I'm a go-getter. I have, as you can tell, a lot of energy, and I really like to direct that energy into solving problems and moving myself forward. And in opera, you do the work, but you do the same job more or less week after week, day after day, year after year. And for some people, that's super satisfying. The music is what drives them. My husband is like that. But at the same time, for me, that wasn't what drives me, right? And so for me, I knew I needed something different. This was 2019, so shortly before COVID hit. And I was considering two different careers. One was software engineering, as said, because I'd done some programming as a kid. I'd also studied software design and development at high school. I was the only girl in the class, which kind of is why it never became a thing for me back then. But I was always really good at it. I won a school award for it. I helped the class learn certain things. It was always something I was talented at, but I never took it anywhere. But this was like 15 years later. So the question was like, would I still be any good at it? I don't know. And the other thing was voice therapy. That was something I was considering. And in the end, I decided to go the software engineering direction, and I'm so glad I did. I did a kind of free online course to kind of get a taste for it. And it was like, I discovered JavaScript, and it was like the clouds parted, the sun shone through, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, this is how my brain works. And the rest, yeah, kind of fell into place after that.
I love that. I agree with what's being said in the chat, directing the energy towards solving problems and seeing that wasn't fulfilling you. I love that story. Maybe looking at that performance world, was there one thing that you carried from it into your first engineering or leadership role, and one thing maybe that you had to unlearn along the way?
Unlearn, I don't think so, but certainly there's more than one thing I brought from the opera world. You know, you would think on paper that you couldn't have two more different jobs. But actually, you know, a lot of the skills were transferable, especially the sense of teamwork and being able to rely on your team members and being able to trust. I think one of the things that I love about software engineering, and obviously this depends on the company culture, but one of the things I love about it is that there is a tendency towards trust. So that you give people a task and you let them do it. You're hands off. You kind of say, okay, go. And in the opera world, you've sometimes got hundreds of people, like literally 100 to 120 people on stage at the same time. And you have to do very specific things at very specific points in the music. And you cannot be there breathing down everyone's neck, trying to make sure everyone's doing their part. You have to trust, okay, I'm going to go jump off that wall now, and there will be a mat underneath me because I know that Bob and James have the job of putting the mat underneath while everyone's looking over there. You know what I mean? So you have to be able to trust everyone implicitly. And I definitely carried that through. I would add that performing itself is actually a skill. The communication, the lack of fear of making mistakes. the opera world, they call it the Olympic sport of singing. So if you think of the level of rigor that is applied to an Olympian, that is the level of rigor that is applied to every professional opera singer. It is extremely rigorous, both physically and artistically. It's not like, we have no microphones. This is something some people don't know about opera. So you have an orchestra of 70 to 80 people in front of you, and you have to sing over them to reach an audience of thousands. That takes a physical effort. It is a very physical job. And so training in those things, you learn to make mistakes a lot. You are constantly told what you are doing wrong. You say air instead of ear, and that's wrong. You have your foot facing this way instead of this way. That's wrong. There's a lot of things that you are told over and over again. So by the time I got to tech, I was like happy to make mistakes. I had no problem as a junior being like, I don't know that. What is that? How does this work? I don't get it. Like, tell me everything, because it didn't feel to me nearly as personal as the kind of critical feedback I'd gotten as a singer. So that low ego, coming in and just being like, yeah, I'm here, I'm new. Obviously, I don't know anything. Tell me everything. That low ego helped me a lot in tech and still does.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And maybe a good segue to imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, especially because you didn't come from a background that's your traditional tech journey?
Yeah, I get asked this question all the time, and I'm laughing because I always say to people, like, if anyone should have experienced imposter syndrome, it's me. But I haven't, and I haven't at all. And I have very strong theories about it. Actually, speaking of the book, I actually say in the book what my theories around imposter syndrome are in more detail. But the general gist of it is that I think imposter syndrome comes from a position where you think you should be able to do something better than you can. So that's ego, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm smart, so I should be able to do this, 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 and this, right? If you thought you were terrible, why would you have any expectations of yourself? You don't. So it comes partly from ego, but it also comes from this misconception that you have to prove yourself to someone. And feeling like you have to perform to a certain level, you have to impress people. And then when there's a topic that you don't know, you're like, oh my God, oh no, everyone's going to realize I don't know this thing and I need to prove that I'm good enough. So again, this also comes from a sense of trying to improve your self-confidence. And to me, that's also an ego-driven thing. So my theory around this is, rather than viewing it as having to prove yourself when you're in a team, the idea is instead to view being the worst in the room as a blessing. Because if you're the worst in the room at something, that means you have a room full of people you can learn from. You have a room full of people who are going to make you better. Tech is such an enormous field. Even if you just take one sliver of it, let's say mobile React Native development, right? Let's take one little sliver of tech. That itself has so much within it that you can be a specialist in. You cannot be ashamed of the gaps in your knowledge. You have to walk in being like, yeah, I've got gaps, he's got gaps, she's got gaps, we've all got gaps in our knowledge. The difference is, are you the kind of person who can put your hand up and say, I have this gap, teach me. Yeah, I want to learn, make me better. Or are you the person who goes, I have this gap, now I'm going to go hide and try to avoid this completely because I'm too scared to admit it in front of people. And then you try to learn it yourself. But to be honest, like, learning it yourself, it's much quicker to just ask someone who already knows. So I think that for me personally, I haven't experienced imposter syndrome. And I think it is, again, because opera completely destroyed any ego I had, which is not a good thing. It's not the way I would recommend doing it. Having your self-confidence brought down like to that level is not the way I would recommend going about it. But nevertheless, it did help me get to a point where I was just like, yeah, like I said, I'm new, I don't know anything, I have this gap, I have that gap, help me fill them, like, teach me. And anytime I've come close to feeling imposter syndrome or some sense of obligation to know something, I've always felt 10 million times better as soon as I just admit it and ask someone. And 10 times out of 10, literally 0 times when I've admitted I don't know something, has someone been like, oh, wow, like, you really don't know that? Like, it's never happened. All the time people are like, oh, great, let me help you. Like, let me teach you. People love to share knowledge. They love teaching other people. They love feeling smart, right? Oh, wow, I know something you don't know. That's so cool. Let me help you, you know? So that's been the experience I've had. I know not everyone is that lucky. I know there are some companies where the culture is not that good or accepting. I do admit that I've been quite lucky in that regard. But nevertheless, I would always encourage people to lean into your gaps rather than shy away or back away from them.
But I love that positive reframing, because with imposter syndrome, we always go negative, like shunning ourselves. But actually, it's like, no, this is an opportunity. How can I dive in? I mean, I often use in my team, I'm like, I'm a noob. Help me understand this. Like that word, I feel like it makes it all me. And I'm like, help me not be a noob. How do I get there?
Exactly.
I absolutely love that.
And we're all noobs at something. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm really great at team leadership. I have a senior back-end developer on my team who is excellent. You know, he knows a bunch of stuff I don't know, of course. And at the same time, I said to him once, oh, have you heard of servant leadership? And he was like, never heard of it. And I'm like, great. So I have something to teach you here, you know? Like, so just because I know a lot about one aspect, that doesn't mean I know a lot about everything. And most people don't. Even the biggest specialists, like, for example, I'm just thinking in the world of front-end testing, Kent C. Dodds is like the expert in front-end testing, right? He's like the guy that you go to. And yet, if you ask him about, I don't know, coding backends in Ruby, he probably has no clue. Right? Like, so it's just one of these things where you're never going to know everything. So you just have to say, like, okay, these are my gaps. Like, let's help me, you know, help me and I'll help you and we'll find our way together.
That's awesome. And a good segue again to our next theme around kind of the mess ups and the milestones. I'm keen to dive into this. We know that leadership isn't a straight line, especially when you're building a lot of credibility for yourself, especially from the outside in. So I want to talk a bit more about resilience and lessons learned along the way. You said that people with non-traditional backgrounds often have to outperform just to be seen. Can you share a moment where you got it right?
Okay. I would say I have a very, it's like a mixed blessing and a curse that is a part of my personality that I've had since childhood, which is that I volunteer for everything and I want to do everything. I was always that kid who was in like 10 different clubs at school, and like that was always me. And I think that has helped me a lot in terms of having this fast growth from junior engineer to engineering manager and director of engineering. And that is that I always put my hand up. If a door opens, I want to walk through it. There are, of course, limits on that. So I set hard limits when it comes to working hours and family time, for example. So I'm a true believer there in terms of like setting boundaries for yourself. But nevertheless, I have found that when you put your hand up and you volunteer and you say, yeah, let me do more than just what's in my job description, then the progress comes out of that. So for example, when I was a junior engineer, right, I was on a team with 2 other junior engineers, or like I started at the same time, I should say, as 2 other junior engineers. And they were both very traditional. They were like 22 years old, fresh out of university. I was there like 32 years old or 31 or whatever it was. And, you know, had been an opera singer for the last 7 years. We were very, very different people. I progressed a lot faster than them, not because of some innate special thing I have, but because I already knew how to move in the corporate world. I had worked in project management and marketing before I became a singer. So I understood the corporate world. I understood clients. I understood what a project needs. I knew how to present what I was learning and to teach others about it as well. And so I was quickly given opportunities to lead little teams. And then I got a chance to lead a project. And then I got a chance to fill in on paternity leave. So when my manager went on paternity leave, I got to fill in for him for a month. And this was like 9 months into my first junior engineering job. Yeah. And it's all because I was just stepping up and showing that I had these other skills that most junior engineers do not. And that doesn't make me better or worse than anyone else. They could read diagrams that I can't read. You know what I mean? They knew more about how a computer works internally than I do, you know? But I had other skills that lended me in the leadership direction and meant that I could show that very visibly in order to prove my value very quickly.
But I also think not underestimating that skill you mentioned in the previous theme about putting your hand up and asking questions. Like you get put on the radar of so many other people across the company when you're inquisitive, you're asking, you're curious, and then they want to check in with you. Be like, oh, did that solve your problem? Did you get unstuck? How are you going? Like people want to help, which then opens even more doors for you, I can imagine.
Yes, and actually on that, one of the pieces of advice I often give to junior engineers is that, or one of the insights I like to give junior engineers is from the manager's perspective. I say, you think, right, the juniors think when they're not asking questions or not showing that they're lacking skills, what they think they're doing is projecting confidence and that they can do it and that everything's fine. What I as a manager think is, are they okay? Is the task going well? Is it going badly? Like, do I need to step in? Do they need help? Like, what's going on? Like, you don't know where they're at. And that actually makes us feel more insecure about their performance than if they just come to us and say, hey, I don't know what this and this is. And I can say, great, let's talk about it. Or let me bring in this other engineer who knows about that topic to talk to you about it, you know, and then I know exactly where they're at. And that makes me feel good because information helps settle any questions that I have. And it's not nice for managers to have to chase after people all the time. It's much better for them to come to us. And when I explain that to juniors, it seems to like make a difference in terms of how they feel about expressing doubts, but also about the good things, you know, that they can come to us about the good things that they achieve too. You know, everything's fair game.
I love that. It's great insights for those that are junior developers wanting to progress. Can you maybe walk us through a time when something went sideways, maybe a project, leadership moment, or even a public talk, and how you worked through it?
So it's a good question. I think something that we had happen last year is that some people in the company had to be let go for financial reasons. And that was a tough time. It's not really something going sideways, but in terms of how the team feels and in terms of the rest of the team, we lost one member of our team. And that for me, it might not change a lot in terms of like, okay, the project needs to be adjusted a little bit or timelines need to be adjusted a little bit. But that's not a huge deal. For me, this was more in terms of morale or motivation. You know, how do I motivate the people who are left to kind of say like, it's okay, like you're fine, your jobs are fine, like you're safe here. And I guess like creating that psychological safety, because that's something that I'm a really strong believer in, that people should feel comfortable talking to me about as much as possible. It's not always possible, of course. There is still a power dynamic there that you can't always overcome. But nevertheless, I try to create an environment where people feel safe with that. And so for me, in that situation, what I did was really make sure in the one-on-ones to give lots of space for people to express their feelings about it, to answer all their questions about it, like how much I knew or didn't know, and was I involved in the decision or not, and like ask all these questions of me so that they could kind of get an idea if they would get any, how much I was involved, and also how it's looking for the company and the team generally, and just trying to maintain that transparency. So for me, I believe that most frustration, anger, these kinds of feelings, nervousness, anxiety in a team environment tends to come from when expectations aren't met. So if someone has an expectation that is not being met, that's a problem. And that's when frustration begins, because they're like, hang on, I thought it was going to be this way, or I thought that was going to happen. And so for me, I really wanted to be fully transparent so that there weren't any false narratives floating around, but also no false expectations about what the situation is or how it happened or anything like that. So yeah, I'd say that's the first one that springs to mind when you ask about things that went sideways.
I think transparency is so important. So 100% agree with that. Leadership comes with what you've called a mental load, especially when you're visible. What's been one of the hardest leadership moments for you to carry?
Yeah, okay, so now it's the same thing. Because that's the same one, the same example. But I'll speak more to the other part of the question, which is leadership coming as at a heavy load. Was it? Is that who you said?
Mental load.
Yes. Heavy mental load. Yeah, that's right. I think one of the things, if anyone in the audience here is maybe a senior engineer or a lead developer or a tech lead or something like that, and they're considering moving up into management, I would say one of the biggest things to be aware of, one of the biggest challenges for managers and especially new managers is not being able to be like one of the team anymore. Like you're not one of the developers anymore. You're not going to get invited to the same places. You're not like, you're going to have to sometimes deliver bad news. I actually wrote a blog post about this. I'll find it later if you like. But it's called It's Time to Be the Bad Guy. And it's actually exactly about this topic, that sometimes you have to be the one who's willing to say in both directions, like, the buck stops with me. And by both directions, I mean coming from the developers up towards management and coming from the management down towards the developers. So an example of that, if I have a developer who's been really struggling to communicate to a product manager about why something has to happen in a certain technical sense. Yeah, so let's say there's a technical restriction and they have to do it a different way, but lots of developers aren't so good at explaining technical concepts to non-technical people. They can't get the point across. Then I'll say to them two things. I'll say, firstly, send them to me. I'll explain it to them. Like you don't have to take that burden of explaining it to them. Like let them come to me. And I say, secondly, if they keep pushing you, if they refuse to talk to me, you just say to them, oh, I'm so sorry, it's out of my hands. Anna told me to do it this way. You know, I'll be the bad guy. Right? Let me be the villain in the story. I don't care, right? I'm happy to take that for them. And at the same time, reporting up, of course. So usually I'm reporting directly to a CTO. And in that scenario, I would say, for example, if something goes wrong in the team, yeah, I have to say, that's on me. I made the wrong call there, you know, and so sometimes this also goes back to a blameless culture. Those who understand blameless culture will know this concept. If something goes wrong in the team, it's very easy for a developer to put that blame on themselves and to say, oh, you know, I messed up. I did this thing the wrong way. That happened to us last year. And I said to them, in a football match, when the ball goes into the goals, right, is it the goalkeeper's fault? Or did it have to go through 10 other people before it got to them, right? Like there's a whole team involved here. And in this case, I'm the coach, right? I have to set up the team in a certain way. It's on me to structure the team and structure our processes in such a way that these mistakes cannot happen or are less likely to happen, right? We minimize what can go wrong. So if you've made this mistake, okay, fine, you made that mistake, you learn from it, then I'm happy. Like, I don't need to guilt trip you about it. There's no point, right? Just learn from it, move on, like, fine, lesson learned. But I have to reflect then on how was it possible that this error made it to this stage? What did I do? What could we as a team have done differently to make sure that didn't happen? And that's where I think the real growth comes from. But it does mean that you have to be the bad guy sometimes, and you have to say, like, this is my fault, this is on me. I'm the one who takes the heat from the developers for management decisions and from management for the developers' work. And that's a lonely position to be in. It is not fun in a social sense. As much as I love working with lots of different people, it's something that takes a lot of getting used to and is one of the reasons I see so many senior developers go up and then go back down again because they go, oh, wait, this is actually not so fun. So yeah, so that's accountability. Exactly, Carl. That's exactly the point. Yeah, it's about taking accountability and being willing to put yourself on the line and your own reputation on the line for both management decisions and team decisions.
Amazing. Okay, I think we can move on to theme number 3 around building and leading for the future. Zooming out a little bit, leadership isn't just about your own path, it's about shaping the culture and the teams that come after you. Yeah. You've already spoken about, intentional leadership, soft skills, and visibility. I'm keen to explore how you think a little bit about the future of tech. You said before that moving fast and breaking things doesn't work in mental health tech. Tell us about a moment, or not a moment, when that principle saved your team from a costly mistake.
Yeah. She says it this way because before this started, I said to her, I don't think I have an example for you. And she said, okay, well then tell us how you didn't have a moment like that. And I was like, okay, great, I could do that. So here we are. So thank you, Alex, for that good suggestion. Yes, so mental health tech, and especially, as I said, we're a highly regulated application that is treated like a medical device. So if you think of a pacemaker, right, that's exactly how we are regulated. And similarly, there are risks involved with applications like ours. We are looking into people's mental health. We are giving them advice on how to handle their mental health. And any medical condition, especially around mental health, has risks. And the number one risk, of course, is suicide. But self-harm is, of course, high up there as well. Depressive episodes, panic attacks. These are all risks that come with any mental health product. So for us, if sometimes people are actually relying on our programs for the kind of support they need, part of what they get is one-on-one chat with a real therapist. So just text-based chat. And if someone, let's say, is having a panic attack and feels like they need our app to remind them of their coping mechanisms or some mantras that maybe they're using for themselves, or they want to send a message to their therapist and they can't log on because we've used some third-party library and we haven't updated it, or we updated it and it's broken our login button or something, that is a huge risk. Yeah. So we are not in a position where we can just be like, yeah, let's try this cool new thing. Let's do that. Move fast, go. We really can't do that because the risks to our users is much higher than it is, for example, with a to-do list app, right? Which is still a risk, I guess, if people get a bit stressed out, but it's not suicide, right? That's not the risk that you're working with. So we therefore move pretty slowly. We have a lot of ISOs that we have to comply to. And we have audits, of course, that we have to comply with. But the main thing, of course, is quality control. So not only do our developers write their own tests, we also have a QA team. So we have one QA engineer per team who is also looking into every single thing that we deploy. On top of that, we do sanity tests. We have full regression testing almost on every release. We are very, very careful about it. And we also have a really thorough triage process for any bugs that pop up. So we use P0, P1s, P2s, and pretty standard rating system for triage processes. But nevertheless, we have certain guidelines, like a P0 has to be solved within 24 hours, a P1 has to be solved within 48, and I think a P2, if I'm remembering correctly, is 7 days. So we kind of have these guidelines in place so that we know, okay, P0, we drop everything. It is super important. This comes with a huge risk to our users, and we need to resolve it. So yes, that's kind of how we avoid any major errors that could put the mental health of our patients at risk.
Got you. Thanks for sharing the guidelines. Of course. What is your leadership North Star, that principle or value that you keep on returning to?
Yeah, it sounds really I know it's such a buzzword, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's simply the word agile. It's simply the word agile. And I mean agile in both senses, both in terms of processes and the Agile Manifesto and all that kind of stuff, but more in terms of adaptability as well. I was talking to one of my engineers about this just today, where I was saying that to me, the number one mistake that new managers make is thinking that there is a correct way of doing things and that that is how things must be done. Because it is just not the case. Something that works perfectly for one team, you would think on paper, okay, well, there's another team of the same size and the same number of developers. It should work well with that team too, but it just doesn't. And it's just not that transferable. You have to have a lot of tools in your toolkit. And this is hard, especially for people who are coming from engineering, because there is usually a right way of doing things in code, right? And I mean, often there are multiple options, of course, but you have to have a huge toolkit as a manager, and you have to be adaptable to all of your team members. You have to really get to know each individual one. How do they work? How do they like to communicate? What level of like interaction or I don't want to call it micromanagement, but how much level of oversight do they actually want from a manager? Because some people don't thrive with a manager over their shoulder. Other people want deadlines and actually work really well with deadlines. You can't come into a team with your own idea of how things should be. You really need to take that time, especially as said for new managers, or if you're starting a new job. I'm starting a new job next month, so this is like high on my radar right now, that early stage, that first month to 2 months, maybe even 3 months, you should be spending mostly asking questions and getting to know people before you try to change anything, unless it's very easy, low-hanging fruit. So really take that time and think about the tools you have. And if you don't have the tools, use the resources that are out there, like use these sessions to get ideas, or go and read some books. You know, you can even use ChatGPT. It's pretty good at coming up with some ideas sometimes. There are lots of different ways that you can do it, but I would say just always stay adaptable to your team, because that is the number one thing that I always try to do. With my next position, I can't say yet what it is, but I can say with my next position, I'll be responsible for multiple teams, not just one team. And for that, it's going to be something where I'm going to have to make these changes across several different teams pretty much at the same time. And to do that, I need to understand those teams deeply and how they work and how they want to work, how they like to work, so that we can achieve the results we want, but also still have a positive working environment, a positive culture. People feel heard. They know that you're not just coming in and using whatever you used at the last place, that you're really listening to them and their needs.
I love that. And we'll keep an eye on your LinkedIn for the announcements within the next couple of weeks. AI, very topical at the moment. AI is moving very fast. What's something tech leaders aren't talking about enough when it comes to interviews or team building? What would you like to see change?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different topics I could dive into here. Obviously, the one I know the most about is the technical interview process. You mentioned in your introduction that I'm the creator of the McDougall method for technical interview processes. Honestly, I don't personally feel like you mentioned it's innovative. I don't actually personally think it's all that innovative, but people have told me that this is like something they've never heard of before. So I'm just like, okay, great, let's roll with it. So the McDougall method is all about embracing AI, and especially embracing agents as a tool of, like, a modern tool of development, of software development, rather than viewing it as cheating or showing that you don't know your stuff, you know. And instead of that, I'm coming from the basic belief that firstly, tech interviews should be fair, and they should give every person an opportunity to really display what they can do, right? Not just what they know, but what they can do. Secondly, that the current system that is being used throughout the whole tech world for interviews is messed up. And I'm really, really holding back from swearing here. It is messed up because the two main ways that people are doing interviews right now are either DSA, so data structures and algorithms, where they're using things like leak code to test, you know, do people know how to invert a binary tree or whatever? That's number one. And the second one is take homes. And everyone keeps talking about take home take-home technical rounds, or take-home exams as being like some holy grail of fairness, and it's just not the case. I am a mum of 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old, I have a 2-year-old. When I log off at 5 p.m., I don't log off at all. I'm just logging into the next one, right? So like if you give me a take-home exam and you say I have 24 hours, I really have about 2 hours to complete that.
Yeah.
Which is when they go to bed, right? Whereas if I'm, like I said, a 22-year-old fresh out of university, right, and you give me the same take home and you give me 24 hours, it doesn't matter if you say, oh, only spend an hour on it or only spend 3 hours on it. I'm spending 24, maybe even 20, maybe 20, but I need a little bit of sleep, but 20 hours on it. You know what I mean? There is no fairness there at all. And furthermore, when you bring in the idea of AI, how can you guarantee that any of this is someone's own thinking at all? Anyway, right? So we accept that AI is a problem. We accept that data structures and algorithms is not a good way to know whether someone can actually code a product, right, or a feature, because knowing data structures and algorithms is about memorization. And I have met many, many, many forgetful engineers who have been brilliant at their jobs. I do not believe that memory correlates strongly with logical and problem-solving capacity. Just me, maybe, but that's my belief. I think it's messed up to use DSA as a measure of engineering capability. So what do? We can see AI is a problem if we give them anything to do away from the computer. We can no longer control the environment people are doing interviews in, right? This isn't the 2000s where people are walking into an office and having a whiteboard behind them and having to solve it in front of you, right? So how do we actually see if they can solve real world problems? And that is what the McDougall method solves. It's basically a pair programming focused structure. There's a lot more to it than just that, of course, but as said, you can look at my blog and go into lots and lots of detail on it there. You don't need to buy my book. It has nothing to do with the McDougall method. You can just read a blog post. And you can also see how we developed it, which might be cool for some leaders as well, because I developed it with engineers as to how to get there. And it is about saying, here is half an hour, essentially, pair programming with a code base that is very similar to our actual code base, but not our real code base, with preset problems that you need to solve. You use that time only to solve the problems, right? And then after that, we will ask about the why and the how and what could have been done better. And the AI suggested this, that, or the other, or Google suggested this, that, or the other. Why didn't you use that? Or why did you use that? What problems do you see that could come up if you implement it that way, et cetera, et cetera. So you essentially use the pair programming section as the doing, to see what they can do, how much they can get done, and in what way. And then you use the section afterwards to have a chat about it and see, okay, do they actually know what the AI did, or were they just like blindly accepting what it offered? And that's the basic idea, because right now I feel like a lot of people, when they're thinking about technical interview rounds, and this is natural, right? But they're thinking about what they did when they were engineers, right? And they are thinking, okay, I had to stand in this room with a whiteboard, so I'm going to give them a whiteboard-esque problem. I'm going to give them leet code. Or they're thinking, oh, I did a take-home task and it went really well for me, so like I'll give them a take-home task with a similar problem. And it's like, okay, but this is the thing about AI changing everything, or changing the development landscape. The systems that we have available to us now, the tools we have available to us now, are not the same as when these managers, directors, CTOs were doing their technical interviews. It is different. And we do not control the environment anymore, because most of them are done remotely now. So we need to accept that we don't have that control anymore. We need to look for new ways of doing things, and ones that actually demonstrate how someone works and what they can do. So that's the main gist of my my method.
No, thanks for sharing. I'm conscious of time because I see there's quite a few audience questions. And we still want to dive into the last theme. So I think let's move on. Fourth theme, visibility and storytelling and building your brand. A standout part of your journey is how you've used storytelling and visibility to build both your career and your leadership. As you said, you didn't wait for doors to open, you opened them yourself. You've said that visibility comes with assumptions like ego or the need to prove yourself. Can you share a moment where your visibility helped someone else and reminded you why you keep showing up?
Absolutely. I mean, the easiest way for me to answer this question is to reference the fact that I am a woman in tech. I know this might blow your mind, but there are actually not that many of us yet, or at the moment, and we lose a lot of them as well. So one of the things that continues to happen is that women quit tech in their 30s. And I think one of the things that keeps me showing up, especially online, is the messages that I get from girls and women telling me that it means a lot to them to have someone who is succeeding in leadership, and especially in senior leadership, because before this position, I was director of product and engineering for Europe's largest media company, Axel Springer. So like to have someone in senior technical leadership be there, showing up, being outspoken. Honestly, I have no filter. I have no humility. I have no shame. What I think is what I say. And I'm very open about, firstly, about my ambitions. Everyone I know knows I want to be a CTO. It's no secret at all. That's where I'm going with my career. And secondly, I have no problem talking about what I'm good at and bragging, frankly. And it's not a humble brag. It's just a straight up brag. And I don't I refuse to be ashamed of that. I'm also happy to admit the stuff I don't know. As I said before, I don't have an ego about it. It's not me being like, oh, look how great I am that I can do this stuff. It's just like, yeah, I can do that stuff. I'm good at that. That's a fact. Here's the stuff I'm not good at. That's also a fact. You know, it's not an emotional thing for me. It's just like, that's how it is. And I think there is a lot of pressure on women to be humble and to be like quietly, be a quiet achiever, and to not challenge people as well in their assumptions, or not to cause too much trouble. There are a lot of very negative labels associated with women who do these things. And I just don't care. I refuse to care about it, you know, and I refuse to give in to that. And I think that is very freeing for other women to see that, like, you don't have to play this balancing act. You don't have to play this game where you're like trying to be pretty but not too pretty. You're trying to be like funny but not too funny, you know, like it's kind of, you can just chill, like just be yourself, just own what you can do, take credit for the things that you do, don't let other people take credit for it, be proud of what you achieve, just own it, you know, and don't let other people like stop you from doing that because of their assumptions and what they want you to be. Like, it's just not worth it. It's not worth your time and energy.
I think that's an amazing soundbite. Like, I want to steal that for myself and be like, whenever like I go into a hard meeting and I need to put on like, okay, I need to challenge ideas now, that's going to be my pep talk. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe how did writing and speaking publicly help you grow technically and position yourself more as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, so I started more in Twitter. Like when I was learning to code, I started off more in Twitter. I did really well there. And that kind of led to me doing some technical writing and YouTube videos and stuff like that. And then I wrote the book, of course, but I have to be honest, writing a book really takes it out of you. Like after I finished that book, I was like, I don't want to write anything ever again. I'm done. And it's only this year, 3 years later, that I'm finally like, okay, I can write again. And that's why I've started blogging again just this year. But I can say that attending events, which is something I've done a lot of in the last few years, has really helped me both technically, because I'm exposing myself to a lot of technical people and technical ideas. And again, finding those gaps in my own knowledge where I go, oh, I've actually never heard of that. Should I have heard of that? Like, maybe I should look into that, you know? So for one thing, exposing those gaps that I have in my own knowledge, which I find very helpful. And secondly, networking, just getting to know people. People I've met at these events have opened doors for me that I didn't ask them to open. People I've met and had good conversations with who message me months, sometimes years later and say, hey, I just heard of this thing. You should look into it. I've gotten coaching out of people I've met at events. I've gotten job interviews. I've gotten job offers that I don't want. I've gotten plenty of things out of those, and I think just being visible in that space. I would say right now I'm reasonably well known in the Berlin tech community, and I think it's just because I show up. I just show up, and I am very vocal about who I am and what I do and what I know and what I don't know. And I think people respect that honesty and openness. And yeah, that's I think it for me. I would argue for engineers. So one of the things I did in my previous job, just to give you a bit of something a bit practical here out of this, so it's not just like me, is I used to do workshops for engineers on public speaking and on technical speaking specifically. And one of the things that I often came up against was this belief that, I don't have anything to talk about. Like, I don't have a topic to talk about. And one of the things I said to them was, everything you do, how your team works, the ticket you're working on right now, any little bug, you can take any ticket you've worked on in the past 2 years and you can make a presentation about it, guaranteed. Because a 30-minute presentation, even a 20-minute presentation, it actually goes very quickly. You really don't need a lot of material to talk about. And guaranteed, this thing that you're working on that you think is boring, that is interesting to someone. It might be interesting to a junior because it's something they've never had to implement before, or it might be interesting to someone from a different tech stack because they have done that before in, I don't know, Ruby on Rails, but they've never seen it done in TypeScript or something. There is always something for somebody, and you should never let this belief that you or your work is boring in some way stop you from actually looking at, hang on, who could actually learn something from this? And that itself, like, there are always people out there who are looking to learn basic things. So even if you're working at the most basic level, be it technically, be it as a leader, anything like that, there are people out there who don't know that. And maybe the way you explain it could be the thing that helps it click for them differently to how anyone else has explained it. And that's what kind of, again, you mentioned this before, what keeps you coming back. I think that's the other thing for me is, like, I'm good at communicating. Yeah, again, this is one of these skills that I have. I'm a good communicator. And sometimes I think I can communicate things in a way that will click for people that maybe haven't quite gotten it before. And it might be me who does that. It might be you who does that. It might be someone else in this chat who does that for someone. But the more of us who contribute and who put ourselves out there on stage, in the blogosphere, on YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever, the more likely that information is to be found by someone who needs it. So that's where I land on it.
Awesome. I'm keen to dive into audience questions. Conscious of time, but we're gonna give it a good whack. Let's start with Brendan. With AI coming in and transforming how we work, do you have views or thoughts on how AI will transform leadership and how we as leaders work with teams and individuals?
Oof, I have so many thoughts. So many thoughts of views. How long do we have? No, okay. I think, which direction do I go with this? I was thinking, like, should we go into the direction of one-on-ones? Should we go into the direction of, like, career growth? I'm not sure. I think the best thing that AI can help with is about creating plans for people's career growth. So let's go with that, because I think this is one of the things that a lot of managers struggle with, especially if you are lucky enough to have a very diverse team. And I mean diverse in all senses of the word, like in terms of how people think or their goals or their skills, not just where they're from or how they look. That people with if you have a very diverse team, you have people who want to advance in different ways. Some people will just want more money. That's it. Like, everything else doesn't matter to them. Some people will want to move up the ladder. Some people will want to move into a different specialty. Some people want to move into product. Some people want to go back to being a barista at their local cafe. Like, you've got all kinds of people, all kinds of motivations. And one of the things I think is hard for teams and leaders to deal with is adapting to that, because we know our own motivation the best, and that is where we are coming from. So I think what AI can really help with is, especially agents, if you create your own agent, you really get it to challenge you on assumptions that you are making, and you can actually use it as a way to reflect on one-on-ones, on the motivation of your team members, etc. If you haven't heard of the what is it called? I don't know if it's called motivation poker. That's what I always call it, but I don't think it's moving motivators. That's what it's called. Moving motivators is a really fun way to work out what motivates your individual team members. If you don't know it already, look it up. It's part of the Management 3.0 kind of world. And if you can work out what is motivating individual team members, feed that into the AI along with your own reflections, anything from your one-on-ones, you can start kind of building more dynamic plans around how to develop each individual rather than falling back on what you might already know or the people you've met before, because it's very, very easy. As humans, we are pattern seekers. Yeah, our brains love patterns. And we see someone who says, oh, I just care about money. And you think about the last person you worked with who just cared about money, right? And if we do it, we don't even realize we're doing it. Yeah. So I think for me, in terms of how AI, I'm just going back to the question, how AI will transform leadership, I think if we can use it rather than to be lazy, because that is one way you can use AI, but rather than using it to be lazy, we use it to challenge us, to challenge how we think and how we do things, and to really take us to task in a way that maybe our colleagues aren't willing to do, then I think it can give us a lot of benefits in terms of being more agile, being more adaptable to our teams.
Thanks. I think that was a great answer. Because you come from an untraditional background and spoke a lot about skill stacking, what do you think is an underrated or overlooked skill in tech teams?
Yeah, I love this term, skill stacking. I actually didn't know that one before. That's awesome. But yeah, let's stack them up. An underrated or overlooked skill. Yeah. The thing is, I think there's a lot more attention coming onto what people term soft skills. I hate the term soft skills, but because I don't think they're soft or easy at all. I think they're quite hard. But I think that's already kind of happening. So I'm not sure that it's so underrated anymore. But I would certainly say that, to me, every team needs a person who is energetic or motivating to others. You know, you need to have at least one person on your team who is like that. You know, I was that. Like, I know that I'm saying this like from a very biased perspective, perhaps, but I do think every team needs at least one person who is like, they're bringing the energy, bringing the enthusiasm, like really got that drive, and kind of bounces the team along. I often also say, by the way, that you would hate to have a team that was like all people like me. Because that's too much. But so again, it's not about a one size fits all thing. Like, it's about a team, how you make up a team, right? Like, how do you balance a team? And I think every team needs at least one person who is like that. So I would say energy is something that is still, I think, overlooked a lot. So people will talk about communication skills, great. People will talk about like friendliness, awesome. People who are open to people from diverse backgrounds, also super important. You don't want a toxic person on your team. Great, great, great. All awesome. Of course, technical skills goes without saying. But in the end, if everyone is turning up to the daily every day and sitting there like, and there's no developer who is like, hey everyone, how was your weekend? You know, like getting people kind of excited. Well, you can be that, but in the end, you're still the manager. You're not part of, like I said before, you're not part of that team, yeah, in the same way as one of the developers. So just having that one person who kind of keeps everyone bouncing along and keeps the vibes good, I think that's super underrated. And I think every team should have at least one, ideally two.
Amazing. I am conscious of time, so I think we have to leave it there with audience questions. I'm sorry, audience, if we didn't get to your questions, but at least we tackled the most upvoted ones.
Tell you what, Alex, why don't you send me all the questions? I will try to answer them in LinkedIn posts over the coming few weeks.
That is amazing. There we go. So then everyone can follow Anna on LinkedIn and also then see your announcement of your role change over the next couple of weeks.
When it happens, yes, it's still hush.
Maybe just a quick rapid fire end off. You've once said you're allergic to vague advice. What's a piece of vague leadership advice you think we should retire?
Oh, a vague leadership advice. I think it's like a toxic optimism. So people are just like, oh, just be happy. Like, as you can tell, I'm a very happy person, but like, you should be serious and upset when it calls for it. Like that, it doesn't mean anything to just be happy, like be optimistic. I think it's fake. It can be fake.
Oh, I've got chills now. Okay, thank you for that. Amazing. That brings us to the end of today's Q&A. Anna, your journey from opera to tech leadership reminds us that there's really no single path. You can change it at any time. Audience that's remained, we will send the recording if you missed out any nuggets. And there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom, so please have a look at the recording. I'm just going to drop a quick poll if you'd like to join one of our upcoming events. We do this monthly, so if you want to see from our next tech leader, have a look. And also just want to shout out Carl Ingerish. You've won a copy of Anna's book. There were a lot of people engaging in the chat. I'm so sorry. I wish I could get everyone a book, but I'll be in contact with you with next steps. And then Anna, just a huge thank you again for your time, your honest reflections, hard-won wisdom. It was really amazing to hear your story. So grateful to have you here. And then, yeah, just thank you to our audience for always engaging, always showing up, and hopefully we'll see you all at the next event. Cheers.